Hi, Francesca.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm all right. I'm so excited that you're here. This is fantastic. We loved everything that we've seen you do. We love your design ethic. You are a designer, creator, and author. And I was so excited when you said yes to this because I wanted to get an artist and a creator to actually answer these questions. I've got an amazing chef, the chef who does the food on my retreats. I've got an actor and a cold water advocate to talk about her stuff. And I wanted you as a creative to answer the questions too. So thank you so much for agreeing to it.
That's right. Looking forward to it.
And you have your little boy with you as well, so we might see a little
Yes,
head
you might
looking
see a
into
little
you.
baby pop up every now and again, or the screen might go up while I
Yeah, indeed.
little privacy.
Just yeah, just the my eyes.
Just the eyes.
Cool. So, I'm gonna ask you a few of these lovely comfort zone
Yeah.
questions, and I just would love your wisdom and your experience just to help share with anyone who is in a similar position to you or just sees any sort of resonance or experiences any sort of I would like to do a bit of that too, but I'm feeling a bit stopped.
Yeah, sure.
Anything we can help. So, first question I'd like to ask you is can you share a specific time when you felt resistance to in your comfort zone, but you still managed to break through?
Yeah, so I've had because I've kind of followed a really not typical career kind of trajectory and still am on a path of being like I'm going to be 40 in a few years and like I still don't have a direct route to what I'm doing. There's been quite a few times where I've wanted to begin things or start things. I've had an idea for something where I found like I didn't go to like an art school or anything, so my peers weren't all creative. So sometimes I would like kind of like want to soundboard like ideas I have for like the next step, and then I would be met with people who don't have the
Mm,
same ability I have to kind of completely envision something, and then I would be met with a lot of like don't know about that. So
mm,
the main one that comes to mind is when I wanted to start my old business, which was a weaving studio.
mm,
And I didn't come from a weaving background, but I had discovered these looms in Japan and no one was doing it in London. And I thought it would be great. That I kept saying to people, I want to start like a kind of drop in casual beginners weaving studio that's kind of like a meditative textiles
gorgeous.
space.
Mm.
And every time I told someone about it, they were like, hair weaving? What do you mean hair weaving? You're like a white woman. Like, what are you talking about? And every time I was like, weaving. And it was interesting also because it made me realize, even at that point, like how disconnected people are, especially in the UK for some reason, with textiles and what we're wearing and all this kind of stuff,
Mm.
which kind of eventually like tight wove in to what I was doing,
Nice.
and like it has become thank you weaving words, not just yarn, but yeah, just like, and that became very interesting for me even now, where I'm really conscious that people don't aren't aware of what you're talking about always when you've tapped into something. And so when
Mm.
I was starting that business, I had the idea and then I kind of shrunk away from it a bit because no one knew what I was talking about. And then I kind of just persevered. I just had this very distinct idea. I think because I'd been to Japan and I'd seen a version of it and I'd experienced it and it was so lovely that
Nice.
I persevered with it. And it was, I thought it would be like a couple of months of running this weaving business and like kind of like I just put some money into it that I had and I was like I don't know, like a tiny bit, and I was trying to see what it was going to work, and I ended up running this business for almost 4 years.
Wow.
And I only stopped it because COVID started and my lease was up, and I was like, I'm actually completely ready for the next thing now. So it was a weirdly
Wow.
good time for me. But yeah, so that was one of those times where it's just like every time,
Yeah.
because people can't, and that's really the main thing for a creative. And I think now I know many more creatives from working in an industry, like when you describe something to people who don't envision things the way your mind works, you will never receive the confirmation that you have yourself about it, if that makes sense. So I
Absolutely.
know now if I have an idea, even now I have an idea for something I want to do and I'll tell people, and some people will be like, oh, I don't know. And some people are like, oh yeah. And I'm like, every time someone says, oh, I don't know, I think I'm trying to remind myself like they can't see what I can see in my head.
Yes.
So and I know now, I know what I want to do. So that's really the main thing where I feel that.
And I love the way you describe that, actually, the vision of it. Well, first of all, the experience of having seen it elsewhere and experienced it
Yeah.
yourself. And then, like, just knowing it's possible, like, knowing your
Yeah.
bones it's possible. It's like, yeah, I've seen it, I've experienced it, I've lived it. I
Yeah. Yeah,
want to
exactly.
create this. And
And
actually,
because not all, yeah, sorry, I was gonna say because not all ideas that I've had work that way, where I've seen it physically. And that was like, for me, I saw that was when I was in my late 20s. That was really important for me to understand at that point where I didn't have a lot of confidence in my own creative ability, that I knew something was going to work because I'd seen it, but because other people hadn't seen it. It was like I tapped into this thing that happened in another country and I could bring it here. Whereas now, a lot of ideas I would have, they haven't been somewhere else. It's
yeah,
just something that sits in my head.
yeah,
But I know that I had this vision, so I think that was really lucky for me. But it's very hard when it's something you just can see and other people can't see it.
absolutely. I think, and I love that description, because I think actually creating a picture for yourself that is enough
Yeah,
carrot. What is the carrot that will get you through everybody else, all the naysayers,
yeah,
all the setbacks? It isn't always
definitely.
straightforward, is it? You're like,
No.
right, I want that thing. And I think the clearer you can be around, I want it to feel like this,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
as a designer and as a as a creative. I mean, I understand as well as a coach that it's so useful to go, if you can
Yeah,
really create a visual and a feeling around the thing that you want to
yeah.
achieve.
For me, it's always like I can envision like the publicity shots of what I eventually want the end product to be. Even if I never get there, that's where my brain has to be able to see that like end publicity shot in order for me to know like I know what that would look like, I know what it would feel like. So it's just about whether or not I have the I have the drive to like get me to that point.
Yeah.
And that was the same with the studio. Like I had a very specific view of like I wanted it to what it wanted to look like and how I wanted it to feel. And I remember even friends who were really like weren't sure came to the opening night and were like, wow. And I was like, yes, I was trying to get like explain it, but I can't like draw it. Anyway, so yeah.
And thinking about the intrinsic, so like the internal feeling about it, but also then the extrinsic around, like, then what would it look like from the outside to
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
Actually having both of those aspects is like, what would other people see about that? But
yeah,
for individual self-expression, and
yeah.
sometimes when there isn't an external product to see, like, how
Yeah,
do
and
you
that's the difficulty as well when you want to actually market whatever it is that you're creating. Because if I'm like, oh, I want to knit myself a jumper, like who cares? Like I wouldn't even discuss it with anyone.
it's
Like I
my
just make
jumper.
it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, yeah, it looks like what I want it to look like, great. And then other people are like, oh, it looks nice. I'm like, yeah, great, I don't care. But like when it's a business, you're like, the reason I start like asking people is because I'm like, ultimately, I want this creative idea to have make an income. And
Mm.
so it becomes like very important to ask other people. But I think as you continue to work on those ideas, you start to get a better idea of like what would maybe
Yes.
give people something that they want, and you start to kind of combine an idea of like I feel like this thing is missing and I have this idea that could potentially fill that in, and and then it kind of marries together.
Gorgeous. Thank you, Francesca.